Senator Mike Crapo is a Republican from Idaho, a member of the Gang of Six, and he joins us live from Washington. Senator, good morning to you.
Good morning.
If you're Boehner, where do you turn now? What's your next logical move?
Well, Speaker Boehner has developed a new piece of legislation. It's about a $3 trillion bill. It has a two-step process with a short-term extension and then a committee that is going to develop very significant future reforms to see if they can get past a longer-term extension. His job right now is to pass that in the House. It's not clear that they have the votes for it yet. I believe that between now and maybe a day from now, tomorrow sometime, they should be able to get the votes and pass it to send it over to the Senate. If they can do that, then I think that could become the vehicle to help us solve the problem.
So you think you think between the Journal saying, come on, guys, get on board, and Cantor's office and his office trying to round up these House Republicans, that will more than offset the Club for Growth and Heritage Foundations that say hold steady?
I think so, and it's going to be very close, frankly. It's still a very open question, but I have to believe that if you have the Speaker and the Majority Leader and then the support coming in terms of developing the intensity for the need to get to a solution, they ought to be able to do it. But like I say, it is a very close call.
Senator, you said that if the plan could pass the House and get sent to the Senate, it would be the vehicle to help us solve this problem. Does that mean that you believe that you also have enough votes in the Senate to pass this, or that this simply will be a working plan and this will be a springboard for another possible plan?
Well, first of all, the Majority Leader, Harry Reid, has said that the Boehner plan will not pass the Senate. I hope that he was premature in that prediction. But even if the Democrats are able to kill the Boehner plan in the Senate, and again, I hope they don't do that. But if it gets to the Senate and they do kill it, then I think it could at least become the springboard for the negotiations that will get us a plan that can then pass in both houses. What we've had now is a problem finding any plan that could pass in either house, let alone one that can pass in both houses.
CBO was not as kind to Boehner as it appears to be to Reid. S&P says we'd prefer one vote rather than two. Aren't there two very big obstacles to the Boehner plan at this point?
Yes, there are. However, one of the things they're doing is reworking the analysis that CBO made. I frankly have big concerns about the Reid plan in terms of the reality of the numbers in it. When you look at taking credit for savings for overseas contingency operations that we already know are not going to generate costs, and then attributing debt service savings to that as well. And so we're in this battle of trying to say whose savings are real, but I think that's the key point here. Whichever plan can come forward that has real savings in the neighborhood of $3 and I hope $4 trillion is the one that I hope will get the momentum to move forward.
Senator, obviously there's so much back and forth going on. I wanted to go back to the soundbite that we played from the CEO of Dow Chemical, who said that, when he travels the world, the U.S. is increasingly being viewed as a laughing stock. We might look to the bond market and see the 10-year yield holding steady below 3% and say, you know what, we shouldn't really be worried. But we are seeing the dollar steadily decline against most of the major currencies out there, except for maybe the euro, simply because they have their own sovereign debt crisis underway. Are you concerned about the perception of the U.S. around the world right now and the status of the dollar as a world's reserve currency?
I am very concerned about it. I believe that the way that the U.S. economy and the U.S. actions in dealing with our debt ceiling and our debt crisis is perceived globally will have a huge impact on our bond markets. And frankly, it could have a huge impact on the rating agencies' evaluation as to whether they will downgrade our bonds. If they do that, I think that the impact would be very, very devastating. And I think that the decline of the dollar and the increased urgency that we are facing, along with the worry across the globe in markets as to whether we will solve this problem, is creating increasingly further problems for us to deal with.
Senator, good morning. It's Simon Hobbs. I heard what you said earlier about the Boehner plan. There's an awful lot of wishful thinking on your part. Isn't the reality that he can't get the right wing of the party on board, that it won't pass the Senate, and in fact the president has said that he's going to veto it? At this point, the Boehner plan looks to be very much on the defensive, which presumably just leaves us with Harry Reid's.
Well, first of all, I agree with you. The Boehner plan, if it were voted on today, would probably not pass the House. What I was saying is that when you get the Speaker and the Majority Leader lining up to push hard, that hopefully they will be able to get that through the House. I don't believe that that Leader Reid's bill has much better of a chance. In fact, I think it has a worse chance in the Senate. What I hope happens is if the Boehner plan does not pass, that it at least becomes the vehicle which has the momentum to generate the core of the next deal. And we need to get to that fast.
But the danger here for the right wing of the Republican Party is that the Boehner plan does not get through. Let's say that Harry Reid's plan does get through the Senate. Let's say that he's able to do that. That immediately then presumably puts those Republicans on the back foot, because they can come through and say there is one plan on the table. It's coming from the Democrats. Either you Republicans in front of the country now vote that through in the House, or we hit the debt ceiling. And the danger is that the political advantage is lost very rapidly by those Tea Party players, isn't it?
In that scenario, yes, although I don't expect that scenario has any much more likelihood of playing out than the previous one that you discussed. Namely, I'm not sure, or I don't have a level of confidence at all that the Reid plan will make it through the Senate. As I said earlier, one of the problems we face right now is we don't literally have a piece of legislation that can pass in either of the two houses, let alone one that we expect has the ability to get the momentum to get through both houses. One of them has to start generating some momentum.
Finally, Gang of Six, I just wonder, you guys have been around for this whole time, sometimes under the radar, sometimes popping up with what appeared to be momentarily a solution. Has the relevance of the Gang of Six, has that faded given where we are right now?
Well, no, not at all. As a matter of fact, the Gang of Six proposal is gaining momentum, but you have to understand that the Gang of Six proposal is a much broader, much more comprehensive, and much larger approach to solving our debt crisis. It was never developed in the context of being a solution to the debt ceiling battle, although now that it's out there and in play, part or all of it could be utilized as a vehicle for solving the debt ceiling battle. Remember, though, that there is a huge difference. Once we get past this debt ceiling battle, we will still face a debt crisis. And that's where I believe the Gang of Six plan really comes into its own in terms of getting the bipartisan support across the Capitol.
Can I just follow up with a question about the Tea Party members, effectively, that are in the House?
Yes.
Representative Gowdy said yesterday, we're not a bunch of knuckle-dragging, mouth-breathing Neanderthals. We're interested in answering what we perceive to have been the election mandate, which is to stop the spending. Is there a way in which the political establishment, which clearly feels that they are in the way on both sides of the House, can reach out to these people on the right-hand side or the right of the Republican Party and better bring them into the conversation so that we don't get the gridlock that we have at the moment? Is there any political capital in that, do you think?
Yes, I do. And it gets back to the problem that almost all of the plans that have been put forward so far, except the Gang of Six plan, frankly, face. And that is they are trying to extend the debt ceiling for $2.5 trillion of new spending over 18 months with proposals that have somewhere between $1.5 and $3 trillion of supposed savings over 10 years. But there's no confidence that we will achieve those 10-year savings levels. And what we need is to have an enforcement mechanism created, and we have that available, one that will assure that Congress can't use loopholes like it always does and get past these 10-year target numbers. So I believe that a strong enforcement mechanism to reform the budget process and the spending process in Congress is the kind of thing that can legitimately and honorably be asked for by those who want to see these plans come forward and provide real estimates of real spending reductions. And that's the objective that the Tea Party members have.
Senator Crapo, I wanted to ask you, especially given that S&P and Moody's are testifying today in front of the House Financial Services Committee, the threat of a downgrade of U.S. debt obviously is front and center when it comes to the market concern. Do you find it, or do you find within Congress a sense of irony that we are hanging our financial fate in the markets is hanging on what S&P and Moody's are saying when they so badly missed the financial crisis? Because our trajectory in terms of the debt, in terms of spending, was in place well before they warned that they would downgrade the United States.
Yes, I do find a bit of irony there, and in fact, we face a bit of a problem here trying to solve this issue on the debt ceiling in this sense. If we do not extend the debt ceiling and get a resolution of the issue, there's a high risk that we will see a downgrade coming from the rating agencies, or at least the question is significantly increased. On the other hand, we've already been told by the agencies themselves that if we simply extend the debt ceiling and don't have true, meaningful reforms that show a shift in American fiscal policy that will convince markets that we are serious about controlling our fiscal problems, then that also could generate a downgrade, even if there were an increase in the debt ceiling. And so my point is, we not only have to deal with the debt ceiling crisis in terms of whether we will extend it, we have to deal with the substance of our fiscal policy, and we've got to convince international and world markets that we are serious about changing our fiscal policy in America and controlling our debt crisis.
Right. And before we go, and I promise this will be it, do you believe August 2nd is that firm deadline, or are you in the camp along with some others today that say the Treasury, even if its credit limit is maxed out, can use some cash in its wallet, and maybe that takes us to middle of August?
I think August 2nd is the firm deadline. You know, it may push a day or two past that, but Social Security checks have to go out, I believe, on August 3rd. We have a major interest payments that need to be made, and at a minimum by August 15th, we will have an interest payment that must be made and that we will need to have authority to deal with before that happens. So sometime between August 2nd and August 15th, I think closer to August 2nd is the real time.
Okay. Senator, appreciate your time today. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Senator Crapo of Idaho joining us from the Hill.